Ren Er has 1,000 armies and horses, and monsters roam freely. I only have one sword in my hand, and it will flow freely. Let's see how an ordinary young man rises up in this world full of monsters and experts, wielding a sword in his hand to unleash a brilliant path of light. If you all think that Peerless Swordsmanship is good, please don't forget to recommend it to your friends in QQ groups and Weibo. Keywords of the novel. Peerless Swordsmanship without pop-ups. Download the complete collection of Peerless Swordsmanship TXT, and read the latest chapters of Peerless Swordsmanship. Chapter 1. Leaves falling from the mortal world. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. On the boundless plain, a dilapidated building nestles here, surrounded by weeds, copper rust everywhere, and the visible broken walls and debris everywhere, exuding a sense of desolation. Through the two bright moons, big and small, in the sky, one can clearly see a man wearing a black combat suit sitting cross-legged in this dilapidated building. This man is not very old, and his facial features appear slightly immature. Despite not being handsome, his face exudes a mature and steady temperament that does not match his age, which is something that can only be achieved through life's trials. Surprisingly, on the man's cross-legged body lay a long sword. The sword was 3 feet long, but it turned dark. From a distance, it seemed as if it had not yet charged. I wonder how to hunt and kill prey with such a long sword. The quiet night exudes endless mystery, and the laws of the jungle are still playing out in the grass. The faint chattering sound, gently transmitted, would not have been audible to anyone without excellent hearing ability, let alone understood what this sound represents. Yi Chenmeng opened his eyes and a gleam emerged, showing a steadiness that was not in line with his age. However, a faint smile appeared on his not very outstanding face. For those living on the brink of life and death, it is a delightful thing to meet a valuable but not very strong mountain cat. The current bobcats are different from those before the Great Cataclysm. The most obvious ones are the 2 long fangs in their mouths, and the most valuable part of bobcats is these 2 fangs. Yi Chen slowly stood up with his long sword in hand. I don't know how many times he had done this action, so much so that he didn't make any sound. Yi Chen is like a dark messenger, sneaking into the grass. The grass is very high and dense, and it is almost impossible to walk in this grass without making a sound. Yi Chen couldn't do it either, but he had patience. Every slight advance paused for a while, waiting for the gentle breeze to caress him. He followed the faint sound of wild grass blowing in the breeze and slowly moved forward. This way of moving forward requires achieving an incredible level of self-control over oneself, which requires controlling one's muscles throughout the body and not making any unnecessary noises. This time, there were not many accidents. Yi Chen pressed his long sword against his chest and looked straight ahead through the cracks of the grass. In the bushes ahead, a black figure about 1 meter tall stood quietly with a pair of pearl-like eyes, carefully searching for prey around him. Although the bobcat is not very powerful, only a first-level monster, it is still somewhat difficult for Yi Chen. This is also Yi Chen's first time attacking a first-level monster, otherwise Yi Chen wouldn't have been so cautious. Yi Chen dared not get too close, holding a long sword without a scabbard in his hand, holding his breath and being cautious. The bobcat ahead couldn't see its fur clearly in this faint night, so it could only see a rough picture. However, these were enough for Yi Chen. The bobcat's jewel-like eyes suddenly froze, its body moved, and a black shadow flashed past. It pounced fiercely towards one side, with its long fangs piercing fiercely. Yi Chen could even hear the sound of its fangs piercing through flesh and blood. As the bobcat moved, Yi Chen also followed suit. The bobcat, who had just killed its prey, was at its lowest level of vigilance and also at its easiest time to succeed. Yi Chen's body spread out and his long sword in his hand quickly adjusted. Like a black lightning bolt, the long sword aimed at the neck of the bobcat and stabbed it. A kind of animal instinct that always excels in life and death. The joy and instant relaxation of the bobcat hunting its prey disappear in an instant. With a fierce press of its front paw on the ground, the bobcat's body leaps up, narrowly avoiding the sword of Yi Chen. Yi Chen's face remained unchanged. With a palm press and a push, the long sword was in mid-air, with a steep half-turn and the tip facing upwards, once again piercing the neck of the mountain cat. This time, the mountain cat could not dodge, and the sword tip penetrated into its neck. The biggest difference between demon beasts and wild beasts is not only in their appearance, but also in their stronger bodies and much stronger defenses compared to wild beasts. When the sword tip pierces the neck of the mountain cat, it only pierces a small spot. Unable to let the bobcat struggle too much, Yi Chen used his other palm to lift his entire body with all his strength. The tall body of the bobcat was lifted up by this force, and the black long sword pierced through its neck. Then, Yi Chen stepped on the bobcat's body and kicked it away. The bobcat had a hole pierced through its neck, with blood flowing continuously. It was kicked away by Yi Chen and lay on the ground, struggling to get up. However, after only a few struggles, it let out a mournful cry and completely collapsed. After waiting for a while, Yi Chen walked over to the side of the mountain cat. The mountain cat had completely died. The previous blow seemed simple, but from the surprise attack to that one, it was not known how many life and death crises it had experienced before it was trained. Yi Chen used his long sword to remove the two fangs of the mountain cat, and then packed it on his back. The credit points sold by a first-level monster mountain cat were almost enough for a month, during which Yi Chen basically no longer had to engage in such adventurous hunting. Yi Chen left here with a joyful mood, carrying the bobcat on his back. The faint smell of blood drifted behind him, perhaps sparking another battle. On the sky, the two bright moons, big and small, still hung peacefully. Yi Chen walked cautiously on the way back to the city. Since the great disaster, the birth of many warriors has lowered the legal constraints to the lowest level, replaced by powerful law enforcement forces. In every city, the rules are often customized by those who are above them. However, everyone has reached a consensus that within the city, no one is allowed to engage in violence, whether it is an enemy or a lover. Except for special places such as duels and underground worlds, once in battle, the rest will be pursued by law enforcement officers. This approach has also gained the support of all warriors. After all, a stable environment is necessary for everyone, just how much is needed. Those powerful warriors don't care much, but those weak and even those who don't know any martial arts are huge. Based on the principle of protecting the weak and the next generation, these rules are implemented safely, and few people will deliberately break them. But rules are dead, people are alive, and violence is not allowed inside the city, but it is possible outside the city. Many conflicts and disputes are resolved outside the city, to the extent that it has become a paradise for violent, cunning, and robbers, but also a hell for law-abiding, honest, and stable people. The number of people who die in the hands of adventurers every year is not much higher than those who die under the claws of monsters, and those who can survive are not those with strong strength, but those who have a firm heart and know how to survive. Yi Chen started hunting at the age of 15 and was able to survive for the past 3 years, which shows that it was not an easy task. Chapter 2. Star City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Since the Great Cataclysm, the world has been invaded by monsters. The powerful terrifying attacks of monsters have forced weaker humans to retreat one after another. Bullets can kill level 1 or 2 monsters, but the defense of monsters above level 3 is terrifying. Ordinary bullets cannot penetrate defense at all. Although humans have been practicing martial arts or other means to enhance their strength since the beginning of the Great Disaster, time is too short and they are no match for monsters, leading to successive defeats and putting humans in a desperate situation. Often, in the face of real adversity, there will always be people who step forward, and these are the so-called heroes. Heroes often have their unique abilities, whether they are extremely powerful or command divine beings. Interestingly, the Great Disaster was caused by a few of these people, but knowing these reasons was many years later. At that time, humans did not know whether they had more resentment or gratitude towards these esteemed figures. But at that time, these few people who stood up were admired and respected by everyone. It was under the leadership of these people that the talents of China and other countries resisted the beast tide and rejected those powerful demon beasts in their current place. After resisting the tide of beasts, defense emerged, followed by several huge cities and the Star City surrounding them. During this period, there were heavy casualties, and the population of the magnificent country of China, which was over 1 billion, was only 2 to 3 billion. It is unknown how many families were destroyed and how many people were separated in life or death. The deceased has passed away, while the living still have to survive. There is not much time for humans to mourn, and the invasion of monsters is still continuous. Humans are still rapidly dying and growing. There are 5 huge cities in the Huaxia region, which are also the main cities of Huaxia, namely Sword City, Blade City, Military City, Formation City, and Dark City. Surrounding these 5 main cities are some small star cities. Although these star cities are not as grand and magnificent as the main city, the city leaders of each star city are extraordinary figures. Otherwise, not many people would live in this star city. After all, in this animal crisis, having a stable environment is everyone's wish. And what Yi Chen went to was a star city around Sword City. Yi Chen appeared at the entrance of the Star City with a bobcat on his back. Although the Star City was not as huge as the main city, it was relative. The entire Star City could accommodate 1 million people, much larger than those ancient cities. The defense of Star City is also quite strong, and the security guard's surname is also very high. Every time they enter and exit Star City, they must present a credit card. This type of credit card is different from the credit card before the disaster, but more intelligent. Even 2 people can transfer credit points face-to-face, instead of having to make payments at self-service banks or banks like before. Hi, isn't this Yi Chen? We only have next month's harvest on the 2nd day of this month. The middle-aged man standing at the city gate, holding a long sword and wearing a black combat uniform, smiled at Yi Chen as he approached. Hee, I'm lucky this month. I met a bobcat in just 2 days. Yi Chen patted his backpack and smiled, saying that he had gone hunting outside the city at the age of 15, and now at the age of 18, he has experienced a lot. At the same time, he has also met many people, and the guard in front of the door is one of them. Okay, even the bobcat can be hunted this time. I don't think it's strange if one day you kid hunts a 3rd-level monster, said the middle-aged man Su Hao. Hee, brother Su is joking. 3rd-level monsters are not something I can hunt. Well, I won't talk anymore. I'll go to the city first and talk to you another day. Yi Chen placed his wrist on the detector, accurately waved goodbye to Su Hao. Well, no problem, the middle-aged man said without much chatting. Yi Chen entered the Star City, a densely populated city where he couldn't see the dilapidation outside. Everything was like the bustling city before the Great Cataclysm, but the buildings here were different from the high-rise buildings of the city, but rather retro-like. Since the Great Cataclysm, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on earth has increased, and some martial arts secrets have been re-studied and practiced by humans, giving birth to many martial artists. The human body quality has also rapidly improved, and the calendar after the Great Cataclysm is also known as the retro calendar to commemorate the secret techniques created by ancient people. It is now 178 years in the retro calendar, and the influence of ancient sages can be said to be profound. Just look at the buildings in front of you. From the outside, there is not much to see from a tall city wall in Xinjiang, but inside are those retro buildings. At first, this type of building was not favored by people because its defense was low and unstable. A single impact from a demon beast may shatter it, but all of this was solved under the powerful formation of the Lord of Formation. Yi Chen looked at the bustling streets and these antique buildings in a daze. After a while, he secretly shook his head. All of this had little to do with him. Now that he could fill his stomach and take care of his sister, it was enough. Thinking so much didn't have much use. Yi Chen came to the shop where he bought and sold monsters. It was a small shop owned by an elderly man named Tian, who was very kind and reasonably priced. He took good care of Yi Chen. Huh, Xiaochen came back so early this month, it looks like he's lucky. Uncle Tian smiled kindly at Yi Chen and sighed in his heart. Yi Chen was so young, so he took on the responsibility of the family and suffered the child. Well, this month's luck is good. This is a bobcat, Uncle Tian, just watch it. Yi Chen smiled and said, Uncle Tian's price is fair, and Yi Chen is not worried that Uncle Tian will pressure his own price. Ha, not bad, first level monster. I'll calculate you 550 points with 2 fangs, and the cat's skin is basically intact. 50 points, 1 pair of cat eyes is 100 points, plus other things, a total of 800 points for you. You see, it's great. Uncle Tian looked at Yi Chen in surprise. Previously, Yi Chen could only hunt some beasts, but now he can hunt first-level monster and grow a lot. Okay, thank you, Uncle Tian. Yi Chen knew that this bobcat was going to another store and could only sell for 750 points at most. If Uncle Tian gave him 800 points, he wouldn't make much money. You should know that a little credit point now is equivalent to 10 yuan before the disaster, and 50 points is equivalent to 500 yuan before, which is enough for people who are frugal to live for a month. It's not easy for you either. Hurry up and go back. Xiaoxue may be in a hurry, Uncle Tian joked. Well, I'm leaving. Yi Chen smiled and nodded before leaving the small shop. He received 800 credit points and many essential items to buy. He bought firefly stones in a big store for 100 points, then left the store and spent about 10 points on some vegetables in the market. With over 600 points left, Yi Chen rushed to his own home. Chapter 3. Yi Shui. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Living in Xingcheng is not entirely free either. You need to pay at least 30 yuan in rent every month. Of course, this is for ordinary residents. This is also for ordinary housing, and the daily rent for high-end housing is also more than 30 yuan. The Yi Chen family originally lived in high-end housing, but since Yi Chen was 13 years old, both his father and mother have gone without returning, and everything has changed. The two, who had no source of livelihood, had to withdraw from the high-end housing. Their surname was changed, and their parents left some property to prevent them from immediately wandering on the streets. At the age of 13, Yi Chen began to take on the responsibility of being a parent, not only to support himself and his younger sister, but also to buy precious materials belonging to the Fire surname for her. During this period, he endured countless hardships. At that time, Yi Chen was unable to go hunting outside the city and could only do some miscellaneous work. Due to his young age, even the simplest miscellaneous work Yi Chen could not be found, and those bosses did not even hire Yi Chen. Fortunately, the director of the library took in Yi Chen and made him an administrator at 80 o'clock every month. Although it was not much, it was barely enough to cover the expenses of 2 people. As Yi Shui's condition worsened with age, this money was not enough, and the money left by his parents was not much used. Yi Chen could only pick up his long sword and go out of the city to hunt wild animals to support his family. After passing through those high-end residential areas, we arrived at the ordinary area. However, the housing in the ordinary area is not as quaint and magnificent as in the high-end residential areas, but rather like buildings from the era of great disasters, with a maximum height of 4 floors, not as ordinary as those with more than 10 floors before. Yi Chen arrived at the ordinary area and walked into an ordinary house. With a thud, there was a knocking sound on the door. Who is it? A crisp and soft voice came from the room. Upon hearing this voice, Yi Chen smiled at the corners of his mouth. Every time he returned home, hearing this crisp voice made Yi Chen feel happy. Me. Yi Chen's mature tone was also very unique, making it easy to tell who it was. There was a sound of running in the room, and even the sound of benches falling to the ground while running, which made Yi Chen laugh. Soon, the door opened and revealed a cute and charming little girl. The little girl was about 13 years old and had the potential of a beautiful girl. I believe it won't be long before she becomes a graceful girl. The little girl looked surprised and said, "Brother, you're back." She then threw herself onto Yi Chen and hugged him tightly. "Huh, alright, let's talk inside." Yi Chen smiled, patted Yi Xue's shoulder, and then pulled her into the room. As soon as she entered, she felt a hot and dry heat rushing towards her face. Although it was summer and it was very hot outside, compared to the heat and dryness of this room, it could only be considered cool outside. However, it was obvious that both of them were accustomed to the heat and dryness inside, and there was no discomfort at all. They handed the vegetables they had bought to Yi Xue, who smiled and took them into the refrigerator in the kitchen. This was a standard 2-bedroom 1-living room, just enough for the two of them to use. Yi Xue took out a bottle of soda and handed it to Yi Chen with a smile, asking, "Brother, I came back so early this month." "Well, good luck." "I hunted and killed a bobcat, which is enough for the next month's use," Yi Chen said lightly. That's a level 1 monster." "Brother, you're not injured, are you?" Yi Xue asked with concern. "He, who is your brother? How can a mere level 1 monster get rid of me?" Yi Chen boasted in front of his sister. He, just brag. Don't do such dangerous things next time. Killing some wild beasts is enough." Yi Xue's face showed a worried expression, from being able to only hunt wild beasts before to now hunting monsters. Although the level of hunting has increased, the damage Yi Chen receives each time is also getting heavier. "Well, listen to you. By the way, this is Firefly Stone, here you are." Yi Chen rubbed his head and said perfunctorily, then quickly took out a fiery red stone from his arms. The stone emitted heat, just like the hot and dry atmosphere in the room. "Brother, did you buy Firefly Stones again? We need enough at home, so we don't need to buy any more." Yi Xue's face flashed with a hint of emotion, but she still said to Yi Chen with some dissatisfaction. "Xiaoxue, your constitution is weak and cold. These fireflies have a great effect on you. It's okay to buy more. Brother doesn't have the money to let you go to those sects, so you can only suffer less. Don't blame brother for his incompetence." Yi Chen touched Yi Xue's head and said in a low voice. "How could it be? How could Xiaoxue blame her brother? Brother is always the best. Xiaoxue will work hard and let Xiaoxue take care of her brother in the future." Yi Xue's eyes were filled with a layer of mist, and she hugged Yi Chen and said. Okay, from now on, my brother will be waiting for Xiaoxue to take care of him." "Well, now he's waiting for Xiaoxue to take care of him." Yi Chen's stomach growled at this moment, instantly dispelling the previous sadness. I'm going to cook." Yi Xue mischievously stuck out her tongue, wiped the mist from the corners of her eyes, and quickly ran to the kitchen to cook. After Yi Xue left, Yi Chen regained his calm demeanor and walked to an unobstructed open space next to him. He held the long sword painted in black in his hand and quietly closed his eyes to feel it. He slowly used various moves, some of which were even strange to the point of being unimaginable. It was unclear how Yi Chen could make such moves. Yi Chen almost grasps every opportunity to cultivate, practicing swordsmanship during the day and internal mental skills at night. However, the internal mental skills Yi Chen cultivates are very ordinary and common, while the swordsmanship is mixed and disorderly. The departure of his parents did not leave much for Yi Chen, and because he did not pay much attention to his teachings at that time, he did not remember those techniques very clearly. So when Yi Chen realized the value of those techniques at the age of 13, it was already too late and he could no longer hear his parents' teachings. The internal skills practiced now are not taught by parents either. The time for cultivation always passed quickly, until Yi Xue shouted to eat and Yi Chen stopped. 13-year-old Yi Shui didn't know how to cook much rice, but since Yi Chen was seriously injured in hunting and lay in bed for more than 10 days last time, Yi Shui started cooking at home. Even when Yi Chen's injury healed, Yi Shui didn't let him into the kitchen. According to Yi Shui's words, "Brother, if you do such a dangerous thing, let Xiao Shui help share some household chores." Faced with Xiao Shui's innocent and resolute face, Yi Chen nodded with satisfaction, and the rest of the meal was made by the happy Xiao Shui. After eating noodles, Yi Chen left home. As it was summer and the weather was hot, he wore relatively few clothes. Those combat uniforms were taken off as early as he entered the city. For the majority of male compatriots, this summer was a blessing, and they could feast their eyes. Even though the world outside was a hellish scene, the instinct of a male's surname was always unavoidable in the city. Although the retro style is very strong nowadays, many women are wearing long skirts, there are still many women who are still very revealing. Short hot pants and open navel clothes are still popular among women, especially those who love racing. They are wild yet fashionable, making them even more charming. However, all of this has nothing to do with Yi Chen. Since taking on the family at the age of 13, Yi Chen's mind has been more focused on how to earn money, how to earn more money, how to cure his sister's illness, and how to make her live a happy life. Chapter 4. Library. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the Star City, there are many ancient houses, most of which are the residences of those sections. The sword cultivation sect is also the most accommodating in the Star City surrounding the Sword City. To enter these sects, except for those with outstanding talents, one can only pay. Although Yi Chen's talent is good, it is not so outstanding. He went to test it at the age of 13. If he were outstanding, his life would definitely be much better than it is now. After all, it's not the time for a major disaster anymore. At that time, the whole people were soldiers, and as long as they wanted to enter, they could basically enter. With just a little more strength, they would have a little more self-protection. Who wouldn't want their sect to have too many people? Many sects even attract people to enter. But now there is no threat of destroying heaven and earth like demon beasts, and it is imaginable that the threshold of the sect will be raised. Yi Chen had no money, so he could only envy those who could enter the sect from outside. However, after several years of training, Yi Chen did not want to enter the sect as much as he did before. Walking on the road, watching these lively sects, Yi Chen came to a library in the center of the city. This was the only library that Yi Chen had taken in when he had nowhere to go, giving him a job that he could barely make a living. Yi Chen was grateful to the director of the library. Although he had resigned from his position as administrator, he always took some time each month to help take care of it. This is a somewhat dilapidated library, with a two-story wooden building that also exudes an ancient style. Rows of bookshelves can be seen outside the door, and an old man sits at a counter inside the door, lazily and lethargically, with eyelids even occasionally falling, looking like he has poor sleep. Yi Chen smiled slightly and headed towards the library. Due to the availability of computers, few people nowadays come to this quaint library and slowly read a book. Although people nowadays are not as restless as before the disaster, they cherish time more than before. Seize all the time to improve themselves, either by practicing martial arts or using technology to improve their bodies. Hu Lao. Yi Chen stood at the edge of the counter and shouted softly to the old man who was dozing off. What's going on? Ha, it's you, kid. Why is this month so early? Did you hunt a monster? The old man named Hu nodded slightly, opened his eyes, and instinctively asked. When he saw Yi Chen, he laughed and said. Mr. Hu was really quick-witted. Luckily, he caught a bobcat and sold some credit points, which is basically enough for next month's livelihood, Yi Chen said with a smile. Well, not bad. You can easily hunt the bobcat now. It seems that you made great progress last month. It won't be long before you can go out twice a month, Hu nodded. Maybe, Yi Chen nodded. He also wanted to go to the suburbs twice a month, but there were both opportunities and dangers in the suburbs. The more times he went, the more dangers he would encounter. Although Yi Chen had made great progress, he could only hunt down low-level monsters or wild beasts. When he encountered high-level monsters, he would only have the chance to escape. When he encountered high-level hunters, he would only have the chance to be robbed. Therefore, unless absolutely necessary, Yi Chen would only go out once a month. After all, Yi Chen is not alone and has a sister to take care of. If he dies, his sister will be helpless. It is something that Yi Chen cannot imagine. You're here, I'll be able to take a good rest as a bad old man. You'll take care of me here. There's a credit point on the computer, and you can collect it yourself based on your monthly salary. Who stood up, stretched lazily, and walked out of the library, not knowing where to go. His slender body didn't look like a bad old man at all. Yi Chen could imagine that when he was young, who must have been a very dignified person. He didn't know how he would have become the director of an old library when he was old. Yi Chen thought for a moment, then shook his head again, putting aside some messy thoughts, and sat in the seat that Hu Lao had originally taken, waiting for the library's borrowers to come and swipe their credit points. The job of a library administrator is simple, with little to do, and one can see many ancient books, even a little bit of cultivation. Yi Chen's internal mental skills were learned from here. Although not advanced mental skills, having them is always better than not having them. As for the credit point, Yi Chen did not move. He had not taken it again since he was 15 years old. Now, what Yi Chen needs to do is wait for everyone in the library to leave clean, which is time for him to read and practice. The books in the library are all old books, and almost all the people in the library are elderly. The elderly read books and pictures of their young memories, as well as the loneliness of leisure time. Few real young people come here to seek knowledge. The useful martial arts have long been plundered by high-level officials. Those books are stored in the sect library or other hidden places, and even there are such secret scripts on the upper level. However, if you want these secret scripts, you will have to pay a huge price, or you will have reached a certain level of authority, which Yi Chen cannot afford now. This somewhat outdated library has given Yi Chen a convenient place, and it's not surprising that Yi Chen often comes over. Although Yi Chen is grateful to the director in his heart and genuinely wants to help, he still wants to find something useful for his own improvement in this library to some extent. Yi Chen sat quietly in his seat, waiting for the library to close, then cleaned and organized the books that had been flipped through, followed by his own free time. Usually, this kind of free time is also Yi Chen's favorite time, but today it seems like God played a joke on Yi Chen. It's not about people coming and going, but one or two people searching around in this library, just like thieves. For the administrator, thieves are a troublesome thing. Before they steal something, you're not sure if the other person is a thief. When the other person takes action, it's okay to see it. If they don't see it, they can only consider themselves unlucky. They have experienced these things before. Fortunately, Mr. Hu didn't pay much attention to those lost books, but it also made Yi Chen feel frustrated for a long time, feeling that he had let down Mr. Hu's treatment. For these two sneaky guys, Yi Chen had to stop practicing and instead focus his gaze on the computer in front of him. The computer displayed a man and a woman flipping through books haphazardly, and some books were no longer in their original positions. What surprised Yi Chen was that neither the man nor the woman looked like the thieves of the past. The man was handsome, the woman was beautiful, and she was dressed in a more fashionable way. She didn't look like someone who lacked diamonds or gold. Such people would come to steal books. Yi Chen was a bit uncertain, but still stared at the computer screen. To be precise, Yi Chen's gaze remained on the beautiful woman for a longer time. She was beautiful and lovely, dressed in a clean white long dress, with black flowing long hair draped over her shoulders, which further accentuated the woman's appearance. The woman was flipping through the books in a chaotic manner, as if searching for something. The man was also searching for something, but the two did not intersect. After a while, the woman seemed to have found what she wanted. A smile appeared on her beautiful face, and she pulled out a book from the bookshelf. It was a black book that Yi Chen had not seen in this library for so many years. According to reason, most of the books here were knowledgeable and organized by Yi Chen. However, now this beautiful woman has a book that Yi Hao has never seen before. Chapter 5. Black Book. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Almost at the same time, the handsome man also found a black book. Yi Chen looked at the two black books and felt a little dizzy. If it were one, it would be fine, indicating that he might have overlooked it. However, if the two black books were new, it could only be said that they had just arrived in the past few days, otherwise he wouldn't have never seen them before. Yi Chen shook his head and looked at the two people in the computer. Both of them found what they needed, smiled and turned around to walk out. They met at the door. "Oh, isn't this Miss Mingyue? How come you have time to come here?" The handsome man saw the beautiful woman's face flash in surprise and said with a smile. "Su Hao, what are you doing here?" The beautiful woman was also surprised to see someone she knew here. "Well, it's nothing, just reading a book. You know my dad thinks I'm too stupid and asked me to come here to supplement my knowledge." Su Hao sneered, hiding the black book in his hand behind him to prevent Mingyue from seeing it. "Are you still supplementing your knowledge?" Mingyue looked incredulous. Who is Su Hao? The name of intelligence has long been passed down among the younger generation. Of course, in Mingyue's eyes, Su Hao's intelligence is just a small cleverness, but it cannot be denied that Su Hao is indeed exceptionally intelligent. And who would believe such a smart person coming here to supplement their knowledge? Of course, isn't your brain working well? What are you doing here, Mingyue? Su Hao asked, shifting the topic. Su Hao was also curious about Mingyue coming here. This is the library, but there are almost all computers in the library, so why bother coming here? Speaking, Su Hao lowered his head to look at what Mingyue was holding in her hand. His eyes narrowed and he couldn't help but turn back to look at his black book. You're going to gain more knowledge. If we don't learn a little more, we'll really be stupid, Mingyue said with a smile. The crystal grapes at home are ripe, so why not go and sit at home for a while when the moon shines? My mother hasn't seen you for a long time, and she even mentioned you to me the day before yesterday, asking me to invite you to sit at home. Su Hao smiled lightly, his handsome face showing no flaws. Don't bother, I will definitely go and sit down when I have time. I won't talk anymore. I'll leave first if I have something to do. Mingyue Qingli's face still smiled faintly, but her words showed an inner unease. As Mingyue spoke, she wanted to leave here. The black book in her hand was very precious to Mingyue, and Mingyue didn't want to make any mistakes. Although Su Hao wanted to keep the black book in Mingyue's hand, he knew it was impossible. Mingyue's name was also well known among the younger generation, surpassing him by no means. Seeing Mingyue wanting to leave, Su Hao paused for a moment and shook his head secretly. Putting aside unrealistic thoughts in his mind, he wanted to leave with Mingyue. Two of you, do you seem to have forgotten something? Yi Chen watched as they were about to leave the door, but he didn't even look at himself. Although he was a small person and couldn't attract others' attention in normal times, in this library, he was still a manager, and the other person still ignored him like this. He naturally walked out of the door, even avoiding registration, which made Yi Chen frown uncontrollably, immediately spoke up and reminded. There was no third person at the door, and Yi Chen's voice was clearly aimed at his surname. Mingyue and Su Hao stopped at the same time, looking at Yi Chen with some astonishment. This was also the first time they had truly looked at Yi Chen, with an ordinary public face that could not attract anyone's attention when placed in a crowd. However, this kind of face was so calm that no young man or girl saw their surprise, excitement, or admiration. It's like facing two strangers. With such a calm face, both Mingyue and Su Hao hesitated. They glanced at each other and saw uncertainty in each other's eyes. Perhaps this man was not simple. Forgot what? Although there was some suspicion that the other party was not simple, it was just not simple. Su Hao had seen so many people, and even the most simple ones only made him slightly wary. It seems that you forgot to register the books in your hands. If you want to borrow them, you can only take them after registration, Yi Chen said calmly. Even if the other party looks extraordinary, he cannot make Yi Chen lower his voice or anything. Who are you? It seems like you're not taking care of this place, right? Su Hao's eyes froze as he looked at Yi Chen. Yi Chen saw a cold killing intent in his eyes, but this killing intent was very faint, perhaps due to Su Hao being provoked by his words. I am the administrator here, and all the books are under my management now. If you have any questions, you can ask Mr. Hu, but now that this place is under my management, you must follow the regulations. Yi Chen said calmly. According to the regulations. What would happen if I didn't follow the regulations? Su Hao was a bit amused, as someone about his age would demand to follow the regulations in this place. Then you can put down the book in your hand, Yi Chen said lightly. What if I don't let go? Yi Chen's repeated words had already made Su Hao feel a little angry. She turned to face Yi Chen and walked towards him. Mingyue wanted to shout out to Su Hao, but she swallowed the words again. Mingyue also wanted to see if someone who could remain calm in front of her, and Su Hao was trying to remain calm or have some control. Then we can only apologize. Yi Chen looked at Su Hao with a calm but firm tone. If Su Hao really doesn't let go or doesn't register, Yi Chen will definitely take action. It depends on whether you have the ability to apologize. Su Hao snorted coldly and extended his paw. The claw wind was fierce and did not touch Yi Chen, but Yi Chen felt a chilly sensation through his body. Yi Chen had a serious expression on his face and punched him with all his might. Although Yi Chen tried his best, his face remained calm, giving people a feeling of not exerting all his might like Su Hao. With his fists against his claws, Yi Chen had an advantage. However, when the two touched, Yi Chen felt his punch hitting the 5 spikes, which still emitted a chilly aura, causing Yi Chen's fists to stiffen. However, such a claw was still blocked by Yi Chen, and Su Hao showed some surprise. He was a strong 8th level expert in the mortal realm, which was rare among the younger generation. Of course, this was in this star city, and it's hard to say about the other cities. However, even so, it still shows the problem. But Yi Chen, who was about the same age as himself, easily blocked one of his claws. Even though he didn't exert all his strength, the opponent didn't exert much force either. This made Su Hao wary. His moves changed quickly, and his claws turned into fingers, exuding a chilly aura, like a cold sword unsheathed, sharp and fast. Yi Chen exerted all his strength to strike, but his fist suddenly loosened and his palm twisted strangely, forming a spiral. If Su Hao's sword finger was inserted, it would be broken in an instant. Su Hao's finger changed again, changing to a palm, and Yi Chen's response changed once again. In just a short moment, the two of them fought many moves, but none of them let the other party collapse. Although their faces remained calm, the 3 people present were very aware of the danger between them. Whether Yi Chen or Su Hao, as long as they were defeated by the other party, it would be the result of palm disability. With a bang, it finally turned into 2 fists colliding, and each of them took a step back. Su Hao's face looked a bit ugly, but he didn't expect to be beaten to a draw by an unknown soldier. Although he didn't exert all his strength, he didn't seem to exert all his strength from the other person's appearance. Su Hao was not sure if the other person could surpass him, so although his face looked ugly, he didn't fight again. In this short period of time, Yi Chen's nerves tightened to the extreme, and he exerted all his strength to resist the opponent's attack. The waves of cold and pain from the back of his hand reminded Yi Chen of his opponent's strength. Yi Chen looked at the other person equally vigilantly, and the two of them were deadlocked. Mingyue on the side looked at the two of them, and from the previous confrontation, she could feel that Yi Chen was still slightly inferior to Su Hao. However, his rich combat experience made up for this deficiency. Even so, Mingyue was a bit surprised. A peer who could draw with Su Hao should not be an unknown person. How could she never hear of it? After a moment of contemplation, Mingyue smiled and said, "Hee, it's not bad. I can even draw with Su Hao. This is the book I took. Can you help me register it?" Mingyue handed the black book in her hand to Yi Chen, and her beautiful and kind smile immediately made people feel good. Yi Chen's face was calm, and he took the black book from Mingyue's hand with his painful hand, trying not to show any flaws to the two people in front of him. Although it was not a big deal, Yi Chen, who was used to being cautious with his surname, was still careful to protect himself, even if it was a rare occurrence. There was a big arrow written on the black book. Yi Chen glanced at it briefly and then swiped it on the detector. The computer displayed the same image, which was actually recorded. Yi Chen was a bit surprised. He hadn't come these days and had actually entered some unfamiliar books. Later, Yi Chen took Mingyue's credit card and registered it, then returned the book to Mingyue. He calmly said the return time, and then turned his gaze to Su Hao beside him. Mingyue also turned her gaze to Su Hao, curious about what book Su Hao had taken. Su Hao's face changed and changed, it was really beautiful. In the end, Su Hao still took out the black book hidden on one side that Mingyue couldn't see clearly. Mingyue was a bit surprised when she saw the black book, and looked at the book in her hand with some disbelief. The black paper showed that she didn't take it wrong, and then looked at Su Hao again, looking at the black book in Su Hao's hand, feeling a bit surprised. Su Hao smiled helplessly, noticing that he had some anticipation for Mingyue's surprise, just like he had seen the other person's book before. He was also somewhat surprised, but seeing the arrow character made Su Hao somewhat aware. The material of the black book in Su Hao's hand is exactly the same as that of the black book in Mingyue's hand. The only difference is the surface text, with a sword character prominently appearing on Su Hao's black book. Yi Chen was also somewhat surprised, but he still pressed the idea of opening the book page and simply swiped it on the detector. He also recorded Su Hao's book and returned it to Su Hao. Mingyue and Su Hao each held their own books and looked at each other, speechless for a moment. The other's black book also had a huge attraction to each other. However, considering the power behind each other, both of them just let go of their desire to snatch. Although this black book is said to be very valuable, it has not yet reached the point of causing the two major powers to break apart. Mingyue's beautiful face smiled slightly and said to Su Hao, "So you know there's such a thing here too." "I heard it by chance, but what surprised me was that there was actually more than one book here, only 3 were leaked out in total, and only 2 of them were here. It doesn't seem easy here." Su Hao smiled and immediately glanced at the library thoughtfully, even more vaguely at Yi Chen. "I don't know what the 3rd book is, I don't know if it's here or not." Mingyue glanced at the bookshelf behind her with a hint of longing, but this thought was quickly thrown away and turned to Yi Chen, saying, "What's your name?" Her faint smile was just right, making people feel good. "Yi Chen." Yi Chen said calmly, not smiling just because the other person was a beautiful woman. "Yi Chen." Mingyue thought for a moment and still hadn't heard of a young handsome man named Yi Chen. However, this didn't affect her judgment of Yi Chen. She smiled and handed him a business card. "Here is my contact information. If you encounter anything, you can contact me." Yi Chen was momentarily taken aback, took the business card handed over by Mingyue, and said, "Thank you." Ignoring Su Hao's jealousy on the side, he directly put the business card in his pocket. Chapter 6. Sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mingyue and Su Hao left, and Yi Chen returned to calmness. Although he was a bit irrational just now, he had a special affection for the library that helped him and even supported him in the most difficult times. When someone else destroyed the interests of the library, Yi Chen stood up without hesitation, even though the other person's identity was extraordinary. The matter has passed, and Yi Chen no longer worries too much. Instead, his mind stays on the black book. Through the conversation between Mingyue and Su Hao, Yi Chen knows that besides those two black books, there is another one that he doesn't know what kind of black book is left outside. Based on the two words on the black book just now, Yi Chen guessed that the third black book should also have the same written word, and this word is likely to be the same as arrow and knife, and also the name of a weapon. What can that book be? Will it also be in this library? Yi Chen was uncertain and waited until everyone in the library had left clean before standing up from his chair, daydreaming that he would never know the answer. If he wanted to know the answer, he would go and take a real look and check it himself. Starting from the first row, Yi Chen put the scattered books back in their original positions one by one, while also checking the bookshelf for the same black books. Many of the books here were familiar to Yi Chen. Although it was not clear where there were more books and where there were fewer books, they could still be easily distinguished, so Yi Chen walked quickly. Rows of bookshelves walked by, without what Yi Chen hoped to see. The books on the second floor also did not have the black books, but recently a batch of books did come in, which rarely talked about cultivation and had little value for Yi Chen now. After tidying up, Yi Chen returned to his seat with a book that introduced swordsmanship. Yi Chen's eerie swordsmanship was all discovered through his own exploration of these books. Although the library claims to have everything, it is the most basic thing, and there is no real swordsmanship at all. Yi Chen can only explore alone based on the descriptions of swordsmanship in books, which is very different from real swordsmanship. However, over the years, Yi Chen has gained a wealth of combat experience in battles with beasts, and he has become somewhat proficient in using sword moves. Although he still does not have a real sword move, what he uses is more suitable for himself. Many books in the library have been studied by Yi Chen, and the one he is holding has also been read. This is a book that introduces eerie swordsmanship. Swordsmanship requires stabbing from the back, which is a concealed sword move that requires a concealed short sword. Yi Chen does not have it, but the true use of this sword move is also not available to Yi Chen. Yi Chen can only change it into a move that can be used only with his own long sword based on his own understanding. Holding a book and carefully watching from the seat, my mind kept simulating and connecting with previous sword techniques. After reading the book for 3 or 4 hours, I finally reviewed it again. Many sword techniques in my mind were also somewhat clear, so I will continue to practice diligently after going back. Yi Chen stood up and wanted to return the book to its original position, but due to sitting for too long, his legs were a bit stiff and numb. Yi Chen stood up directly without leaving any time for relaxation, only to see Yi Chen stumble forward and touch his knee against the counter. With a click, the cabinet door under the counter suddenly opened. Yi Chen stood in place and waited for a while, allowing blood to circulate in his body. After his body had absolute control over his thighs, Yi Chen slowly took 2 steps before turning to try to close the cabinet door that he had accidentally opened. Yi Chen lowered his head and casually closed the small door. He looked inside, but his hand suddenly froze and stopped there. In the cabinet of the counter, a black book was prominently placed on the old and dilapidated book. Yi Chen's heart suddenly quickened, and he realized that a black book would soon appear in front of him. Isn't this just a dream? Yi Chen even pinched his thigh, which felt a pain, telling Yi Chen that it was true. Yi Chen suppressed his nervous heartbeat and only reached out to take out the black book when he had almost recovered. It was a black book made of the same material as Mingyue and Su Hao, with the only difference being the characters on it. As if echoing Yi Chen's speculation earlier, there is only one character on this black book, and it is also the name of a weapon. Sword is the name of this black book. Seeing such a word, Yi Chen felt a sense of excitement and couldn't control himself. He had been practicing swordsmanship since the age of 15. Although he had not practiced any real swordsmanship in these years, Yi Chen's use of the long sword was much more proficient than other weapons. Yi Chen didn't impatiently open the black book. Instead, He put the book that recorded the eerie swordsmanship back in place and called home, telling Xiao Xuan not to wait tonight. After everything was arranged, he sat on the chair and gently placed the black book on his cross-legged leg. Gently caressing this book, it was the only true secret book that Yi Chen had ever seen. Therefore, Yi Chen was excited, and at the same time, he had a worried mindset, thinking that it was a peerless secret book, but also afraid that it was a garbage secret book. Although there was attention from Mingyue and Su Hao earlier, it was evident that this was an excellent secret book. However, there was still concern in his heart that could not be dispelled. Yi Chen knew that in such a situation, his mind could easily be lost, so he never opened the black book. About an hour later, Yi Chen gradually calmed down, and the calm and composed temperament on his face reappeared on his face. Yi Chen's expressionless hands held the black book. This is a book that is one size larger than other books, and cannot be held by one hand. The written sword character has strong and powerful handwriting, and a domineering aura is very faint. However, Yi Chen still feels a kind of oppression, a kind of majesty, as if he is towering above. Opening the page of the book, a line of words came into view. To practice this skill, one must first waste the skill. If one does not waste the skill, one cannot succeed. In just 16 words, it conveyed a sense of tragedy and also a warning, making Yi Chen feel icy cold all over. To practice this skill, one must first discard it. The meaning of the word is very simple, so simple that anyone who knows how to read knows what it means, but it is because of this that Yi Chen feels completely cold. Think about how Yi Chen, after 4 years of hard work and 4 years of hard work, has developed a body full of internal skills and reached the level of 6 in the mortal realm. Now, just because of this sentence, these short 8 words are about to be discarded. This makes Yi Chen not frightened, even like a basin of ice water falling from the sky. Yi Chen suppressed the idea of throwing away the book and continued to read. The more he read, the deeper Yi Chen's heart sank. This was not just a matter of the 16 words, but the entire swordsmanship was even more tragic, making Yi Chen, who was somewhat calm, almost jump. Chapter 7. Cruel Swordsmanship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. From the following content, it can be seen that the prerequisite for abolishing martial arts is actually just a prerequisite, not the most important condition. This is just a possibility, the possibility of practicing this swordsmanship. The cultivation of this sword technique in the Black Book is so strict that it is daunting. Yi Chen cannot think of whether a warrior who can cultivate to a high level still has the courage to recultivate this sword technique. The first thing to do when practicing this swordsmanship is to cultivate the corresponding internal skill mental method, which is called the Hua Jian Ju. It tells the story of transforming one's internal power into a sword Ju, and using the sword technique to unleash it does not seem to reduce one's internal power on the surface. However, looking back at the previous 16 words, it is necessary to abolish all the internal forces practiced. Even if one has practiced the sword transformation technique, this practice cannot return to the previous cultivation level in a short period of time. Although the introduction in this book looks very powerful, the true effect is hard to say, and Yi Chen cannot be certain. If it takes a year and a half to recover to the current level, what use is there? For Yi Chen, it may have a greater impact in the future, but he will definitely not practice. At least now, Yi Chen has some concerns. After all, he doesn't live alone and has a little sister to take care of, so he can't do anything for a year. So just looking at the first differentiation sword technique, Yi Chen had the idea of giving up. Although he could tell from the conversation between Mingyue and Su Hao that this was a good secret book, and it could even be an advanced secret book, Yi Chen still dared not gamble, nor did he dare to bet on his future and survival. However, Yi Chen did not close the book, but continued to read it. These years of reading experience made Yi Chen appear extremely patient. Even if it was a book that was not of much use to him, he could patiently read it. Perhaps there was something he wanted. In addition to internal mental skills, the cultivation of that sword technique also made Yi Chen feel cold all over his body. The first step was to find a peerless sword, and then insert it into his body from the Baihui acupoint on his head before he could practice this sword technique. Nourish the body with swords, nourish the sword with blood, complement each other, and ultimately transform the sword into the body. People are swords, and swords are people. The unity of people and swords dominates the world. The simple words show a bloody and ruthless aura, as well as a proud presence. Is this still a swordsmanship that humans can cultivate? Is it still swordsmanship to let the sword penetrate from the top of the head? It's pure suicide. Yi Chen murmured to himself, almost lost in thought. At some point, he closed the book in his hand, feeling disappointed. Although he had some insights from the secret script, it was not very helpful. Yi Chen put the secret script into the cabinet, then tidied it up and walked towards the way home. Although he called Xiao Xue and was unsure when to return, he didn't know when to finish reading. Since he had finished reading now, he naturally had to go back. It was already past 8 o'clock, and the sky had completely darkened. However, it was summer, and there were still many people on the streets eating, chatting, crossing the street and talking about love. Yi Chen looked at everything around him calmly, without any intention of integrating. Returning home, the lights were still on. Yi Chen knocked on the door and heard Yi Xue's crisp and sweet voice. With a faint smile, Yi Chen answered, and then heard the sound of running. Yi Xue's joyful face reappeared in Yi Chen's eyes. Didn't you say you won't come back tonight? Yi Xue smiled. Why doesn't Xiao Xue welcome me anymore? Yi Chen joked with a smile. Xiao Xue, how dare you? Come in quickly. Yi Xue spat out her tongue and quickly moved away to let Yi Chen in. Brother, have you eaten yet? Yi Xue asked after Yi Chen entered the room. No, I'm just hungry, Yi Chen said with a smile as he looked at the food covered on the table. At the same time, he took off the basket cloth and presented the not-too-cold dinner to Yi Chen. Have you eaten it, Xiao Xue? I've eaten it a long time ago. The dishes have cooled down, let me go heat them up for you. Xiao Xue looked at the dishes on the table, which were a bit cold, and said. No need, it's really delicious when it cools down in the summer. Yi Chen picked up his chopsticks and started eating. Xiao Xue sat on the side watching Yi Chen eat the food with a faint smile on his face. Yi Chen was eating and glanced at the house, and her face gradually darkened. Yi Xue looked at her brother who had just been doing well, and suddenly her face darkened. She didn't know what had happened, so she turned her head to look in the direction Yi Chen had seen before. A puddle of water appeared in Yi Xue's eyes. Yi Xue's expression was flustered. Just as she was about to explain, Yi Chen raised his hand and stopped her. He asked in a deep voice, Xiao Xue, is that cold air coming out again? Yi Chen stared closely at Yi Xue. Yi Xue's small face turned pale. Looking at her brother's heavy cheeks, Yi Xue could only nod obediently. Yi Chen put down his chopsticks and reached out to grab Yi Xue's small hand, and the tentacles felt a chill. Yi Chen's face was solemn, and the time had advanced again. From once every 2 months, it has now evolved into once every month. There is not enough firefly stone in the house. Xiao Xue, do you still have fireflies? Yi Chen thought of something and asked in a low voice. Yi Xue's eyes were flustered, with a look of panic and confusion. She whispered, also, there's a hint of concern in her voice. Yi Chen looked at Yi Xue's expression and knew that things might be even worse than he had anticipated. He said in a deep voice to Yi Xue, Xiao Xue, go and bring all the fireflies. Yi Xue's expression became even more flustered, and she looked up with a look of wanting to cry. There really is still something left, she said, go get it. Yi Chen said with a serious expression, which did not allow Yi Xue to refute. Every time Yi Chen looked serious, Yi Xue knew it was a sign of anger, so she no longer defended herself. Instead, she lowered her head and went back to her bedroom to retrieve the firefly stone, which was a bag containing firefly stones. Yi Chen took the bag and looked at it, his face turning very ugly. Originally, there were only 3 fireflies left, but now there is only 1 left. The other 2 must have been used by Yi Shui. As for blaming Yi Shui too much, since this was originally prepared for her. However, now that Yi Shui's use of these fireflies has increased, her family's credit points are somewhat insufficient. Yi Chen looked at a firefly in the bag and was stunned. Yi Shui thought her brother was angry and timidly pulled Yi Chen, "Brother, Xiaoxue knows she's wrong. In the future, Xiaoxue will use these fireflies less." Yi Chen regained his senses and looked at Xiaoxue's timid appearance. He smiled dumbfounded, then patted her head and said with a smile, Xiaoxue is right. You should use it when you need it, but in the future, you need to tell me about this kind of consumption, okay? Not angry. Yi Shui looked at Yi Chen with timid eyes. He, don't be angry. Xiaoxue must tell her brother in the future, okay? Yi Chen touched Yi Shui's head and smiled. Yi Shui looked at her brother's smile and breathed a soft sigh of relief. She smiled and said, "Well, okay." She nodded heavily. How often does the cold air appear now? Yi Chen's face became solemn again. About once every 10 days, but I feel that the cold is not so unbearable. Brother, Xiaoxue can tolerate it and doesn't need fireflies, Yi Shui said with her hazy eyes open. Silly girl, how could you not need firefly stone to withstand the cold even my brother? Well, go rest now, don't worry, Yi Chen smiled and patted Yi Shui. I really don't need it. Yi Shui said again, with a hint of stubbornness on her small face. I got it, I don't need it. Well, hurry up and go to sleep, Yi Chen said with a smile. Well, Yi Shui nodded and didn't say much before returning to her bedroom. Returning to the bedroom, Yi Shuipan sat on the bed, staring blankly out the window. The moonlight outside tilted down, bringing a refreshing feeling to her soul on this hot night. Under the moonlight, Yi Shui's face gradually strengthened, her fists clenched, and she immediately sat cross-legged on the bed, closing her eyes. If anyone were to watch from outside, they would surely see a faint layer of thin ice quietly appearing on Yi Shui's face. And this layer of thin ice was gradually spreading, slowly spreading from her cheeks towards her body. In the end, Yi Shui's entire body was enveloped in a layer of thin ice, appearing crystal clear under the moonlight, exceptionally smooth, and giving off a faint sense of sanctity. However, no one noticed all of this, nor did they notice the painful expression on Yi Shui's face. Chapter 8. Underground World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Yi Shui went to the room, Yi Chen's smiling face also faded. According to Yi Shui's needs, the monthly demand will greatly increase, and 500 credit points is basically not enough. Although Yi Chen obtained 800 credit points this time, he used around 150 points in the morning, and the remaining money, along with the previous one, is only 1,200 credit points. This money was originally enough for 2 months, but now it seems that it is not enough. Although Yi Shui said she doesn't need it, as her older brother, Yi Chen can't really assume she doesn't need it, so for Yi Chen, her credit score is a bit tight. Yi Chen is trying to earn some credibility, even delaying his cultivation time. As for the sword technique introduced in the Black Book, Yi Chen certainly has no time to think about it now, and he will not abolish the internal skill mental method he is currently practicing. Although this internal skill mental method is the most ordinary mental method, it is the most fundamental thing for Yi Chen now. After a night of no cultivation, Yi Chen stood up from his meditation and quietly washed his rice bowl before returning to his bedroom to rest. The next morning, when Yi Chen got up, the food was already on the table. Yi Shui's busy figure walked around the room and saw Yi Chen get up. Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Brother, get up. Wait a moment, the food will be ready soon." Okay, Yi Chen said with a smile, enjoying every moment of family time. Yi Shui also smiled brightly, with a relaxed and happy expression on her face, as if she had not been affected at all, and there was no change in her actions. Both individuals show a relaxed side in front of each other, which is not a malicious concealment. It is just necessary to give each other confidence, make them feel at ease, and be able to do things with a happy mood. After dinner, Yi Shui stayed at home while Yi Chen walked to the library, thinking about how to make money. There was definitely no way to make money in the library. Although there were also those credit points that could be obtained, since Yi Chen had resigned and only went to help, with excitement, how could he possibly get money? So Yi Chen had to find another way to make money, and those part-time jobs were not suitable for him. Yi Chen had to go out at least once a month, but the duration was uncertain. Perhaps he could stay for more than a month in a day, and many times were not fixed. However, those part-time jobs usually require a fixed time. As for part-time jobs, many companies do not want them, and even if they find them, they will not have too many credit points. For the rest of the work, Yi Chen couldn't think of any good job. The schedule was not fixed, and Yi Chen didn't want it either. Therefore, making money was still somewhat difficult for Yi Chen. Of course, after thinking about it last night, Yi Chen was not without results. If you want to make money quickly, gambling is certainly a good way. However, gambling is an easy way to make money, and losing money is easier. Not many people are familiar with it and their families are ruined due to gambling. Yi Chen also knows about these people. Therefore, in the past, Yi Chen rarely went to the underground world to gamble, but this does not hinder his vision. In fact, when it comes to judging people, Yi Chen has always been very accurate, but there are many things. Even if he is very accurate, Yi Chen has no intention of making money with this. But now that he urgently needs money, he has to take a risk and gamble. Yi Chen went to the library and said to Mr. Hu, then headed towards the southwest corner of the Star City. The Star City was very large, and even by car, it still took more than an hour. Along the way, many people Yi Chen saw were holding long swords. It was normal to carry swords with you in the Star City of the Sword City. The underground world is a place of brutal and bloody chaos. Here, you don't have to worry about the rules of the city. Whatever you want to challenge, life or death is up to you. Yi Chen rarely comes, except for the time when his partner Chen Tao pulled him over to watch the show. And is not really watching, he just came over to help distribute flyers or something, and there was no gambling at all. However, just that time, Yi Chen realized that he could also win money. In Yi Chen's impression, there were 12 matches held that time, and he guessed 10 correctly, with a success rate of over 80%. Such a high success rate was enough for Yi Chen to take a risk. After all, obtaining credit points in this way was much safer than fighting in the suburbs. The only thing to note is that you don't have many credit points, and you absolutely can't lose. Otherwise, you and Yi Shui will have to live on the streets. Oh, isn't this Yi Chen? Yi Chen, why do you want to come here? A bald young man smiled at Yi Chen at the entrance of an ordinary-looking bungalow. Hee, Chen Tao, I'm here to take a look at the martial arts competition, gain some experience, and also fight against those monsters. Yi Chen smiled lightly and said to Chen Tao. That's right, I thought the sun was coming out from the west, and I thought you came over to gamble. So you're here to learn, hurry up and go in. Chen Tao rubbed his head and said to Yi Chen. Hee. Yi Chen patted Chen Tao's shoulder and let him have time to sit at his own home. After chatting for a few words, he walked in. The underground world is divided by area, some are charged, while others are not. For example, those VIP areas have their own private rooms, but the fees are higher. The areas with seats are not very expensive, and the free ones are the standing areas. The area where Yi Chen is located is of course the standing area. Anyway, it's the same. Whether it's a VIP or a sitting or standing person, they all watch the same game, just the comfort level. Yi Chen doesn't really care about this. Every person who enters the underground world will be given a booklet, each with the names of the people who are about to compete. 12 matches a day, along with 3 live challenge matches, make up a total of 15 matches, enough for those who want to play and have a good time. Yi Chen stood in the free zone, where there were the most people and a bit crowded. Looking at the personnel introduction in the booklet, Yi Chen saw that the first match was between Cheng Hao and Xian Yang. Both of them were skilled swordsmen, both at the 8th level of the mortal world. One practiced the unclear sword and the other practiced the fire-wind sword, with comparable strength. It was not easy to distinguish who was strong and who was weak. Yi Chen carefully looked at the booklet in his hand in the crowded free area. Cheng Hao, with his surname Gu, was irritable and couldn't practice the Ming sword, but he needed absolute peace of mind. He was unclear and didn't cry. Only in a quiet environment could he be unclear, just like a blind person. There was not much difference between day and night. Xuanyang's fire-wind sword, on the other hand, is as fiery as the wind, carrying a hunting wind with it every time it is used. The heat is unbearable, and if one accidentally enters the opponent's attack, it often causes discomfort. Although this discomfort is brief, it is enough to turn the tide of defeat in this short period of time. In theory, Xianyang still has the upper hand, but Yi Chen's gaze is more focused on Cheng Hao's introduction. Although Cheng Hao's introduction contradicts his swordsmanship, Yi Chen values this. Of course, this kind of gambling is still somewhat risky, and Yi Chen is not sure either. Therefore, Yi Chen took out the 300 credit points brought by his family and bet 100 on Cheng Hao. Cheng Hao's odds are 1.1.5. If he wins these 100 points, Yi Chen can earn 150 points. The betting time is always fast, and the game starts on time. Cheng Hao, with a rugged face and a rather sturdy figure, carries a broad and long sword, giving people the first impression that he is not like a swordsman, but purely a reckless man. Across from Cheng Hao was a slender figure holding a slender sword. What caught people's attention was that the slender sword turned red, giving the sword a sense of distortion. Good sword. Many people were admiring it, and there were more people supporting Xianyang. However, the bet had already ended, and those who had placed Cheng Hao could only regret it there. The voices were noisy, and Yi Chen didn't say much. He just looked quietly at the two people on the arena, frowning slightly. The booklet was only a text introduction, with relatively little content. Yi Chen didn't expect Xianyang to have a good sword. This has caused a slight change in this gambling game. Chapter 9. First scene. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kid, are you ready? Grandpa, I'm about to take out a sword. Cheng Hao's thick voice instantly overwhelmed the noisy voice, making the entire underground world quiet. Xianyang's figure was relatively small compared to Cheng Hao, but it was still normal compared to normal people. Xianyang smiled and pointed his red long sword diagonally at the ground without saying much. A fiery red aura rose up slowly, and everyone couldn't see the color of the aura. However, it felt like Xuanyang's rising aura was fiery red, which was quite strange, but gave people a natural feeling that it should be like this. Cheng Hao's face froze, and the large sword in his hand roared away. It was just a simple slash, but it had a heavy oppressive force. Cheng Hao's strike also shocked many people. Looking at this somewhat irritable Cheng Hao, his opinion changed slightly. However, Xuanyang's face remained unchanged. His fiery long sword pulled out a sword flower, swiftly striking the blade of the large sword. The fiery long sword curved into an arc like a crescent moon, as if calculating the strength of Cheng Hao's attack. It could reach Xuanyang's head, and if it went down one more point, it could harm Xianyang. With a flick of Xuanyang's finger, the fiery long sword suddenly snapped and became straight again. Cheng Hao's face was startled, and he felt a powerful force suddenly coming from the contact between his long sword and the opponent's long sword. This force was not much smaller than his previous strength, or even stronger. Cheng Hao almost couldn't hold on to his big sword, but at that moment Xianyang bullied him and thrust his fiery long sword into Cheng Hao's throat with lightning speed. Before the long sword could touch it, he felt a hot and dry sensation rushing towards his face. Cheng Hao was shocked. He pressed down his large sword in his hand, which turned into a shield. The fiery red long sword pierced the back of the sword, bending again. Xian Yang smiled faintly, as if this kind of battle was completely uninteresting. As he moved, his figure flashed and he had already reached Cheng Hao's side. With just one sword, he could defeat Cheng Hao. Killing people in this underground world is just a small matter, not a strange thing. People here will not cherish life too much, except for themselves. As soon as Cheng Hao was about to be struck with a sword, many of the people who won under Xianyang looked happy, and even those in the seating area became cheerful, as if there were plenty of credit points rushing towards them. In the standing area, the sound became even more noisy, with many people shouting excitedly. There were obviously more people supporting Xianyang than Cheng Hao, and the cheers were also much louder. Yi Chen remained calm and didn't say a word. Looking at the situation, the bet he had made might end in vain. However, it was not yet the end of the day, and everything was hard to say. Yi Chen didn't believe that Cheng Hao was just using such a small means. The situation on the arena was one-sided, and Xianyang's fire-wine sword not only made him fast, but also carried a sense of heat. The heat alone caused a lot of discomfort, and his overall strength would also decrease significantly. Cheng Hao could only defend, fortunately his large sword was enough to serve as a shield. Although Xuanyang's sword speed was fast, the distance Cheng Hao used to resist was also very short, and as time passed, Cheng Hao's pressure increased. Xuanyang's attack intensified once again. Although it was closely related to the increase in speed, Cheng Hao still faced greater difficulties. However, at this critical moment, Cheng Hao made a surprising move. At this very moment, Cheng Hao actually closed his eyes. Don't Cheng Hao want to live anymore? The people who were betting on Cheng Hao began to curse one after another, while the people who were betting on Xianyang became happy and their credit points were about to be obtained. But seeing Cheng Hao close his eyes, Yi Chen finally regained his composure, which was not much different from what he had guessed. Invisible sword, invisible sword. Although there was no relevant description in the manual, Yi Chen still smelled a hint of abnormality from it. Such a hint of abnormality made Yi Chen bet 100 credit points on Cheng Hao. Cheng Hao, who closed his eyes, seemed to give up in the eyes of others, but Xianyang's face suddenly became solemn on the arena. At this moment, Xianyang felt a hint of danger, which was an instinct that only appeared when his presence threatened him very close to him. And this feeling actually appeared now. Xianyang decisively retreated, and just as Xianyang retreated, Cheng Hao's big sword suddenly became incredibly fast and powerful, even faster than Xuanyang's previous sword speed. Accompanied by this sword, the entire arena was filled with silence. Yes, silence, even if the long sword pierced through the sky and the corners of the mouth roared loudly, it gave people a feeling of silence, and these feelings were all caused by Cheng Hao's sword. Xuanyang's face changed greatly, and he let out a loud shout. The fiery long sword flew up and a layer of blush rose up, staining the half-wall arena red. The faint blush quickly changed, just like the burning clouds in the evening. However, this blush was not only beautiful, but also carries danger in this beauty. Dang dang dang, the sound of two long swords hitting each other appeared particularly harsh in different atmospheres. Many people couldn't see the situation on the arena clearly, so they all asked the people around them. Although Yi Chen had reached the 6th level of the mortal realm, he still couldn't see through the full force of the 8th level strong. However, this alone had greatly benefited Yi Chen. Hurry up, hurry up. The audience's voices echoed one after another, most of them supporting Xianyang. Puchi, a mouthful of blood spat out, causing all the voices supporting Xianyang to suddenly pause. He looked at Xianyang with some disbelief. Xianyang, who had always been in the upper hand, was actually beaten and vomited blood, leaving all the supporters frozen in place, unable to believe it. Okay. Let me just say, Cheng Hao's strength is definitely above Xianyang. As expected, I have set today's credit point, exclaimed the excited audience who had bet on Cheng Hao. That's right. I thought getting a good sword was just amazing, but it's not just enough to show off. Cheng Hao, come on. Someone agreed. I don't think so. You didn't see Xian Yang standing steadily. Although he vomited a mouthful of blood, you could tell that Xian Yang didn't suffer much damage. That's right, I also believe that Xian Yang won't lose, many supporters of Xian Yang agreed. On the arena, Xian Yang wiped away the bloodstains from the corners of his mouth and looked at Cheng Hao with a serious expression. Unexpectedly, Cheng Hao could hurt himself. Since obtaining this fire cloud sword, few of his peers have been able to hurt him. Xian Yang suddenly grinned. Isn't that why he came here? Only in times of crisis can he grow and make progress. The scorching momentum did not decrease but instead rose. With a movement of his body, the fiery red long sword protruded again, shrouded in a halo. Xuanyang's body became somewhat blurry, but his speed became faster and his moves became more fierce. Cheng Hao still closed his eyes, but it seemed like he could clearly see Xuanyang's attacking moves. The large sword in his hand was like an arm, agile, and he managed to dissolve Xuanyang's attacks one by one. The sound of the long swords striking each other was heard from the arena. Previously, Yi Chen could still calm down, but as these two swords began to touch each other, Yi Chen's face changed. Yi Chen was extremely familiar with the use of the long swords. From the previous attacks, Yi Chen found that every attack by Xian Yang was in the same position. Yi Chen secretly said that it's not good. He may lose with his 100 credit points. At this moment, with a click, the sound of the long sword breaking came out, bang. As the two collided, they both retreated, and blood still flowed from the corners of Xian Yang's mouth, indicating that he was injured. But the cheers and excitement echoed out loud, all of whom were previously grey-faced, like a roller coaster ride, with ups and downs in their mood. If their hearts were not good, they might not be able to hold on. Looking at Cheng Hao again, he was holding a broken sword in his hand. The big sword was split in half falling to the ground and the other half in his hand. His open eyes looked stunned, as if he couldn't believe it. Xuanyang's face became somewhat excited and he said to Cheng Hao, "Are you still fighting or not?" Cheng Hao's face changed as he looked at the broken sword in his hand and threw it fiercely to the ground. "Fight? How can we fight without weapons? You think I'm stupid? I won't play with you anymore, let's go." Cheng Hao jumped off the arena quite decisively. As Cheng Hao left, the gamblers who had bet on him cursed one after another, and their faces changed from the previous joy to a dead grey. However, these people were already few, and there were more people present, with the dominant audience still supporting Xian Yang. Yi Chen's face was a bit pale. He lost the first game and only had 200 credit points left. At most, he could gamble 2 more times. If he lost again, his monthly meal expenses would be a problem. Chapter 10. Rongfeng. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yi Chen did not place any bets in the second game, only the last 2 bets were left. Yi Chen had to be cautious and focus on the target before making bets. Therefore, not only did he not place any bets in the second game, but he also did not place any bets in the third and fourth games. Although his estimates were correct, Yi Chen remained calm. It was not until the 5th game that Yi Chen placed his bet. The 2 opponents in this game were both strong players in the 9th level of the mortal world, and they had not died after many underground world competitions, demonstrating their strength. And this time, Yi Chen is optimistic about Shuai-mo. Shuai-mo has participated in 21 matches, winning 15, losing 5, and drawing 1, with impressive results. His opponent Li Tian has participated in 49 matches, winning 40, losing 5, and drawing 4, and neither of them has died. Being able to participate in the battle indicates a problem, while Yi Chen still values Shuai-mo, who has relatively low strength. However, this result made Yi Chen have to doubt his own judgment. Li Tian swept Shuai-mo with absolute strength, adding another stroke to his record. However, Yi Chen lost another 100 credit points. Yi Chen's face was a bit pale, and his expression became even more solemn. He lost again. The two people he had been optimistic about lost 300 credit points, leaving only 100 credit points left. Looking at the 100 credit points in his hand, Yi Chen had a feeling of wanting to cry without tears. He believed in his own judgment and was still very accurate in other competitions. However, once he participated in the bet, he found that his prediction was not accurate, which made Yi Chen feel a bit frustrated and even worried. With only 100 credit points left, what if he lost again? Thinking of this consequence, Yi Chen's heart trembled. If he lost 300 credit points, he would really have to leave the city again, and the danger would increase sharply. Yi Chen gritted his teeth, waited a few times, and in the last game, he bet his last 100 credit points. This time, Yi Chen still faced a disadvantage in surface strength. Although the odds were high, the win rate was not high, but Yi Chen still believed in his feelings. This time, Yi Chen also shouted along with the crowd, his eyes slightly red, appearing more nervous than the people on the arena. But many things you hope to happen, but unfortunately they don't happen, and many impossible things have become possible. According to Yi Chen's previous predictions, they are always so accurate, and his vision is also very sharp, so he basically won't lose. But today, it turned out to be an evil sect. Yi Chen bet 3 times, lost 3 times, and didn't win any of them. This made Yi Chen a little dumbfounded, as all 300 credit points were gone. What should we do? Yi Chen's eyes were momentarily blank, and he stood in place, staring foolishly ahead with a bewildered expression. In a private room on the second floor of the VIP area opposite Yi Chen, a handsome man was sitting on a soft single sofa, with a charming woman sitting on his lap. The woman seductively held a crystal-colored grape and stuffed it into the man's mouth. The handsome man's palm caressed the woman's body, enjoying this kind of treatment, occasionally watching the competition below. The handsome man in today's 12 matches also placed bets, but his luck was much better than Yi Chen's. He won 7 matches and 6 matches, winning about 30,000 credit points. Compared to Yi Chen's 300 credit points, that's a 1.2.1 difference. If Yi Chen could see this handsome man, he would definitely remember that he was Su Hao who fought against him yesterday. Yi Chen did not notice Su Hao, but Su Hao did. Because Yi Chen was standing across from Su Hao, Yi Chen's unremarkable appearance did not attract anyone's attention. Moreover, there were too many people in the free zones. If it weren't for a casual glance, Su Hao would never have cared about the people in these free zones. Looking at Yi Chen's dull gaze, Su Hao's interest gradually increased. He patted the seductive woman's buttocks, gestured for her to walk away, and then pointed to Yi Chen in the free area ahead, saying, "Go challenge him with an 8th level." Behind him, someone echoed away, and Su Hao looked at the passionate speech of the host on the arena with a faint smile on his face. "Everyone, did you enjoy watching the 12 games ahead? Delightful. Not satisfying. Have you ever been addicted to your sister? I lost a big push, but still satisfied. Have you ever been addicted to your sister?" There are those who agree, those who oppose, and those who curse, and their respective groups are mixed together, making the underground world much more lively. The host continued his speech with a smile on his face, saying, "I know that some of you have won credit points and some have lost credit points, but at least you have gained passion from it, haven't you? You have cheered and cheered for the players you like wholeheartedly, haven't you? Losers still have a chance to recoup their profits, and winners can earn more credit points. It all depends on whether you have the courage to play. Do you still want to continue? Tell me. Think." This time the voice became much more neat. The host nodded in satisfaction as he listened to the voice and continued, "Without further ado, the main course for tonight is now. There are no losers in the following 3 matches, only life or death. Moreover, participants are free to choose, regardless of their level or age. Let's start now." "Oh. Sigh. A series of excited voices rang out, cheering for the next person to come on stage. As this is a free game, a game that doesn't see life or death, everyone who wants to go up must consider carefully. Otherwise, they may not see the sun tomorrow by chance, which is not worth it. However, there are many fugitives who can come to the underground world. Winning a game earns a reward of 1% of all bets, which is quite terrifying. With tens of millions of bets placed in each game, if one wins, at least 100,000. With so much money, Yi Chen is certainly envious, but he is quite clear about his own strength. Ordinary martial arts, at most some special swordsmanship, and overall strength is not much stronger than others. If he encounters a strong opponent, he may be unlucky. This is something Yi Chen cannot do. Even if he loses 300 credit points, even if he wants to go out twice a month, he cannot gamble his luck here. There were not only Yi Chen who wanted to make money, but also many who dared to work hard. As soon as the host finished speaking, he ran over to a middle-aged man with a fierce and domineering face, who could scare the child into tears in his eyes and looked around fiercely. Many people were scared back by the fierce gaze, their faces pale, indicating a sense of fear towards this man. Rongfeng, it's Rongfeng. This lunatic is here. After a brief silence, the crowd suddenly started scratching and shouting loudly. Surprisingly, it's Rongfeng. This guy has the support of a madman. Once the battle starts, he never dies or stops, and his methods are extremely cruel. It seems that not many people dare to play today. Rongfeng. Rongfeng.